right. Well, Ronald, thank you so much for being our very, very brave first guest here on the channel. And yeah, so we've had this YouTube channel for a while now, I think a year and a half, and we've been focusing on mental health. And, I post videos where I'm like teaching something about mental health, but I think it's just so much more powerful and important for young people who are watching the channel to hear real stories from real people like you. So thank you for being willing to join us. And for anyone who's watching, this is like a new format, obviously, that we are experimenting with. And if you're, in middle school, or you're in high school, or you're in college, we basically want to give you hope for a better future. And we also want you to know that you're not alone. So that's kind of the purpose of just sharing a conversation like this. And I am a psychologist for youth, and I have been doing this for, I think, 20 years or so. But, Ronald is not my therapy client, and this is not a therapy conversation. So I'm not wearing my therapist hat as we talk. I'm just wearing my human hat. So yeah. Ronald, it might help for people listening if we just share a little bit like how you and I know each other.
Dr. Parke, she wants me to call her Jackie though, but for the sake of this, with Dr. Parke, she was my professor at Vanguard University. And, as the time kind of passed in my time there, she just became somebody who I grew closer and closer to, and got to speak to her during office hours. And we just got to just bond. And I got to just freely just kind of share some things that I was going through throughout my time there. And that's kind of where it all began. And then we just kind of stayed in touch over the years. And this was back in 2017, I think, when I first had my first class, when I first went to Vanguard. So, wow, 2017. That's like 7 years ago.
Oh, right. My goodness. We're old. We're old, Ronald.
Yeah, I'm getting old. You're still young.
Oh, okay. So am I getting younger, or I'm staying the same?
I'm getting younger. I'm getting old. That's how this works.
Okay. All right. Interesting. But 7 years ago, that's like kind of blows my mind to hear you say that, but it's true. And can I just like flex a little bit that like, you graduated undergrad. What did you do after undergrad in terms of school?
Yeah, so after undergrad, graduating from Vanguard, I went on to Azusa Pacific and graduated there with my master's in psychology to be a marriage and family therapist. And then as of the last 2 months, I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I'm now an LMFT.
Yay!
So thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, and I am loving it. And that's what happened to me afterwards.
I know that we have a topic in mind. We want to talk about self-compassion. I am curious though, like what are you loving about your being a therapist?
Yeah, I think overall for me, what I'm loving a lot as far as with being a therapist, so I work at a residential treatment center just for mental health. And a lot of our clients that come to us, right, they come very depressed, very anxious, just very lost in life and not knowing, if there's any hope. And a lot of people coming with SI. And the thing that I love the most is just, it might sound kind of weird, but just how broken they come and how less broken they leave when they leave. They leave with hope. They leave with just learning how to be self-compassionate towards themselves as we're on this topic. And I love being in that journey and being part of it, and just seeing how powerful just a human connection can be, and how much a human connection can change others. And that's just a little bit of that.
Yeah. I mean, you've always been such a passionate person, like since I first met you as a student, but I can just see that you have this fire inside of you as a mental health professional to really help people. And I know it, for people who listen to us as professionals, they're like, you love journeying with broken people, and it sounds strange to other people, right? But it's not the brokenness that we love. It's like the transformation part. Like
that's it. Transformation.
Yeah, like how we intersect people. We have the honor of intersecting people at these broken places and walking alongside them, and then seeing this arc of transformation. And it sounds like you're seeing a really profound arc for a lot of the people that you work with.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So let's see. In terms of self-compassion, because that's kind of the topic that we wanted to circle around today.
Yeah.
How do you even think about that? Like, what is self-compassion, first off?
Yeah. Overall, the way that I like kind of just explaining it is self-compassion is being that friend that you would be for somebody else that is struggling.
Mm.
And another way that I like looking at it is, kind of just think about somebody that you truly love, somebody that you just care for, that you're willing to do anything for. If you see them struggling, hurting, you see them in pain, you want to be there and you want to comfort them. You want to tell them that things are going to get better. You want to help them in any way, shape, or form that you can. And in the same way that you would do that for someone else, now it's about turning the tables and doing it for yourself, learning how to do it. But of course, it's not easier. Like everybody says, it's easier said than done, but it is possible. And, it's done through different techniques and skills that, we can talk about how to practice it more. But overall, in a nutshell, that's what self-compassionate is: showing yourself and giving yourself love.
That's a beautiful explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so self-compassion is kind of treating ourselves the way that we would treat like a loved one or a dear friend that we would want to support, that we would want to love.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when they're having a difficult time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as you know, sometimes, when we go through our own personal struggles, one of the easiest things to do is to bring ourselves down, is to be that inner critic, is to be that critic to ourselves. And oftentimes, a lot of people that I've seen, a lot of people struggle with just picking themselves back up. It's easier to come down than to come up. And that is a struggle.
What do you mean that it's easier to come down than it is to come up?
Yeah, so it's easier to bring yourself down in those moments of, just going through something. It's easier to kind of say, yeah, I'm so dumb. I can't believe I didn't think of doing this instead. I'm so dumb. I can't believe I did this. I should have never done that, right? Than to say, hey, it's okay. Pick yourself back up. You made a mistake. You're human. So it's much harder to do that. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I think we're just kind of used to doing that from what I've seen in people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at some level it has to be human. I mean, and I haven't arrived with this, as I like to say. Like I still struggle with this sometimes too, right? On my harder days that we all have, and it seems like we all have like voices inside of us, and some of those voices might want to condemn us or beat up on us or criticize us. Some people say they have an inner critic. And I get what you're saying. It's like easier to listen to those voices than the voice that might help lift us up or pick us back up.
Yeah. And I like how you shared that. A lot of people do say they have an inner critic. And that inner critic, I think, really lives in all of us, and also lives in me, where we make one mistake and then all of a sudden our mind is producing all of these negative thoughts like you're dumb, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, people don't really like you. So we all have that voice inside of our head. And one of the things that we can do, just to kind of share something and how to work towards that, is we can shut that inner critic down, and we do that through techniques. And just to share kind of a technique that I love and I love giving people, they're diffusion skills. Diffusion is creating separation between us and those thoughts that inner critic produces, that it gives us. And one of the easiest little techniques that I love giving people is called I'm having the thought. I'm having the thought. And so all we do essentially is when that inner critic is active, right? What we do is we use that phrase, I'm having the thought, followed by the thought that we're having. So let's say I'm sitting here and let's say I spill my water, and all of a sudden my inner critic gets active and it starts producing negative thoughts. If my thought is running right now, or my mind is running right now, it might sound something like, you're dumb, you spilled it, now you have to clean it up, you always make this, you always do these mistakes, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that phrase. I'm having the thought that I always do this. I'm having the thought that I always make mistakes. I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. And what that's going to help do is it's going to help me separate from that thought. And if I'm separated from that thought, then I won't feel the intensity of the thought as much as I would if I didn't, right? And so it's just a simple little technique that I wanted to share there, just for anybody to use.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. So that's such a nice technique. Just basically become aware of our thought, and then insert that phrase at the beginning of the thought. I'm having the thought that blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just creates that distance between us and the thought, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all it is. And that's also a way to practice self-compassion, separating ourselves from these unhelpful thoughts and seeing them for what they are, just thoughts. It's not us. It's not who we are. It's just what's coming up.
No. Like, I am not my thoughts. And just because I think a thought doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, like capital T, true.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. That's such a great little practical tip about self-compassion. Yeah. So how have you seen self-compassion make a difference, either in your own life or the lives of people that you've worked with as a therapist?
Yeah. Well, as far as with self-compassion and the impact that I've seen, I want to say just kind of in my own life, kind of growing up, just very shortly, grew up just feeling just very depressed. I used to see things, I want to say very distorted, and I used to bring myself down, just down. I used to believe the thoughts that would come up in my mind, and it was hard for me to just say, you're human. It's okay. It's okay that you're going through this. It's okay that you're thinking this. It's okay. You can get out of this. And it took me a very long time, until I got to my actual grad program to kind of truly start to feel that compassion towards myself. Just to be very brief, but then in the lives of clients, we have clients that are coming in and they're very hard on themselves, whether they come because due to addiction or mental health, they've hurt so many people in their lives and they feel like their life is over, or maybe they reach where they want to reach in their lives and they feel like all hope is gone, and all their mind is doing is it's bringing them down and down and down where they have no hope. But the moment that they insert and practice self-compassion, right, they can see hope. And I think just speaking on the transformation that we spoke about in the beginning, self-compassion it just causes a transformation, within. And when you experience that transformation within, you see it outward. You see it in the way that they behave, in the way that they operate, in the way that they are. Not sure if that kind of answered that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I love about your own story, and I think this is probably the case for many of us as therapists, is like you had to experience that transformation in your own life of having grown up really depressed and having those negative ways of talking to yourself and thinking about yourself. And then you tasted the transformation, and especially in grad school, it sounds like, of being able to have compassion for yourself. And then you were able to basically bring that gift into the lives of the people that you now work with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you think, so this is just total like random curiosity, but do you think that you'd be able to give that to people as a therapist, like that self-compassion, if you hadn't gone through like needing that yourself?
I don't think I would have.
Okay.
And well, to kind of go a little back on that, I think I would be able to teach it, but I don't think it would be received in the way, that it's being received now that I've gone through that. I think you can teach something, but if you haven't really gone through it, then I think the person receiving it won't feel it. But if you've gone through it and you're speaking through it with experience, right, then I think they can feel that compassion. They can feel, that realness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's so awesome. Oh man, mental health is so great. Do you think that they can feel that from you because you're saying like, I have experienced this, or do you think that they can feel that from you just because you have experienced it and you don't have to explain that you needed it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's part of it. And I think the other thing too is they can feel the passion that comes out of it when I speak about it. For example, about once a month, I like giving a group on self compassion, and I kid you not, after each group, like the clients are so engaged in the group, and at least one person says, "Wow, I felt it. I felt that." And this last time I did it, a client had shared, I feel the conviction of this. Like this was speaking to me.
Wow.
We're so passionate, and so they can feel it. And I think if they can feel it from the person that's delivering it, they have hope that it works,
Mm-hmm.
that it's possible. And so that's with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's your passion, it's your lived experience.
Mhm.
And that alone is really powerful for people.
Yeah, definitely.
And it speaks volumes, right? And it
Yeah.
really hits people in a great way.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So it brought up another question for me about self-compassion.
Yeah.
And people who watch this channel, we have a mix of people from different worldviews, different spiritual beliefs, different backgrounds. I think for some of us who have grown up in spiritual communities, we've probably been taught to love other people.
Yeah.
But loving ourselves feels a little, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if you know what I'm getting at, but it almost feels like a little bit like I'm being selfish, or I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to focus on other people. Yeah. Does that bring up any thoughts for you?
Yeah, no, it does. And yeah, if we come from kind of a background, a more kind of religious background that teaches, you have to love others, think of yourself less, be out there for others, support others, right? It can make us feel guilty to think about. I think guilty and just kind of wrong, just kind of weird to kind of just listen to somebody tell you, you got to love yourself. And with that, I think what I would say is, well, it's not about like being conceited towards yourself, but it's about giving yourself some grace. It's about giving yourself some just some kind of like a pick me up type of moment where you're not being conceited towards yourself, or you're not being, let's say, kind of, I don't know why the word comes up, but not narcissistic towards yourself, but you're just reminding yourself on an ultimate level that you are just human. And because you are human, you're going to make mistakes. Because you are human, you're going to experience different range of emotions. Because you are human, you're going to think the way that you think. And it's all because you are human. But the key thing here is to remind yourself that you're human and that you're bound to make mistakes, that you're bound to not be great all the time, that you're bound to not be at your greatest all the time. And so I think it's just ultimately, um, yeah, it's just to remind yourself that you're human, and that's why you're providing yourself that self-love.
Yeah, because we're human, because we need grace.
Yeah.
And by way of being human, we are going to make mistakes.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, that word human is one that I'm thinking a lot about, especially with like, the rise of AI, and we're living through the AI revolution. And so for me, it's just with this mental health conversation, like it's just brought up a lot of thoughts about like the importance of being human and what does that mean and what's different between human and like a bot or AI. AI makes mistakes as well, but I don't know if AI needs grace like we do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we live in real relationships with each other, and part of that is being imperfect and making mistakes and forgiving other people, forgiving ourselves. Yeah. But hearing you talk about it, like I can feel your passion, and I think the way you talk about it is also very groundbreaking, because like when you use the word like, oh, it's not conceited, it's not narcissistic to have self-compassion, I think that's a really important message. Like I know growing up, and this is just my own background and my own communities that I grew up in, but I remember being taught that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And honest, like having an honest assessment of your strengths and weaknesses. So I think that those things are accurate, but I think what you are saying brings a really beautiful nuance and blend to that of like, love other people, love yourself as well, and give yourself grace. And I don't know, I just think that that's such an important like counterbalance to some of what we can hear sometimes that runs counter to that.
Yeah. And, once again, it's easier said than done, and I think the thing I see the most is people just don't know how to actually practice it, right? And so, kind of with that, another thing to add is another practical way to just practice it is to hold yourself kindly and to make room and to make space for what's showing up for you in the moment. Because I think so often another struggle for self compassion is we try to get rid of all the negative things that show up for us, where we don't want to do that because the more that we do that, the more we're hurting ourselves, right? And so, what we want to do is we want to come to a place of acceptance of what's showing up for us. Let's say you're trying to practice self compassion, but then your mind starts telling you, oh, you're being selfish. Oh, you're not supposed to be doing this. Let's not get rid of those thoughts. Instead, let's make room, let's make space for it. And the way that we do that, like you spoke about a little earlier, is just observing what's showing up for you without judgment, without criticism. Just observe what's happening in your mind. Just observe the thoughts that are showing up and allow them to sit there. And eventually they will go away, just like clouds in the sky. They will float away.
Yeah, I love the clouds in the sky metaphor. Sometimes we talk about like leaves along a stream, or some people say like ships along, the surface of the water. And it's an ironic paradox, isn't it? That like if we make room for those negative thoughts or negative emotions, and if we can accept them, we don't get into the power struggle with them. And then ironically, they lose their power, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I love how you said power struggle, because the thing that comes up for me is this beautiful metaphor that I love giving that kind of depicts this. And it's, just imagine playing tug of war with a monster, right? And you guys are just going back and forth. And so the harder you pull, what do you think the monster's going to do? He's going to pull harder, right? And if the monster pulls harder, what are you going to do? You're going to pull harder, right? And now imagine just doing this for an hour. Imagine doing this for a day. Imagine doing this for 10 years. Your hands are going to be hurting. They might be bleeding. You're just going to be exhausted, right? And that's what we constantly do with our thoughts, with what shows up for us. We're constantly playing tug of war with it, and we're just hurting ourselves. And, all our focus is just on that, just battle, right? That then it makes it hard to actually pay attention to the things that matter, that are in front of us. And so if we want to stop this struggle, right, what we have to do is drop the rope, right? The monster's still going to be there in front of us, but it's not going to come at the same intensity, right? Now we'll be able to care and do the things we have to without that interfering. It's still going to be there, but once again, not with the same intensity. And that's the level that we want to get to. And as we do that, right, we're practicing self-compassion. And the question is, how do we drop the rope? Well, a way to drop the rope is just like one of the techniques that I spoke about. I'm having the thought. As we do that, we're dropping the rope.
I love that. That's such a great metaphor with the monster. And we need maybe we need some merch, like, drop the rope t-shirts and mugs or something. But I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but I love the metaphor. It's so powerful for, like, I think a lot of us, we're fighting the monster, right? And, if that's like a terrible boss in a video game, it's like the ironic strategy you want to use is actually not get into the fight and drop the rope. Yeah, it's like a new level of freedom that we can get to.
Level of freedom, That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this is inspired by acceptance and commitment therapy. Is that a type of therapy you're a fan of?
Yeah, so that's the theory that I follow. That's the theory that made a lot of sense to me, and that I decided to integrate into my practice.
I love it.
That's my theory.
Yeah, I love it. And I know people listening may not know what that is, but there's different kind of flavors of therapy, and there's different theories that we study as therapists, and then we try to embody those in the work that we do with people. So I love acceptance and commitment therapy too, actually. So
Awesome.
yeah. I think one of the things I love about it is also like that it's asking people to get to the heart of what they truly value in life, like what is the most important, and then take committed action based on that. So
Exactly. Yeah.
like I remember when I studied it a little bit, it was like, well, what kind of person do you really want to be?
Mhm.
Right? Even if you're going to do something that's hard, even if you're going to do something that's scary, what type of person do you want to be? And it might sound morbid, but sometimes we even say like, what do you want to be on your gravestone? Like, what would it say?
Yeah.
And live backward from that. So it can be really existential in that way too.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. I'm getting a little too therapisty. So I mean, thinking about like if people are watching this conversation and they're like in middle school or they're in high school or they're in college, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this, but just like, is there anything you wish you had known when you were younger?
Yeah, let me think here. I'm thinking, let me see, middle school, high school. I think one of the biggest things that I'm thinking about right now is that, the thoughts that I was having weren't 100% true. What I mean is, I remember back in middle school, struggling in some classes, struggling to kind of form certain connections that I wanted to, and they didn't happen. And I would just think, I'm going to be no one in life. I'm not going to be successful. And as I'm thinking of that, I'm also remembering, I have older siblings, and, they were doing great in life, and just thinking like, wow, I'm here, I'm not good enough at anything, and they're achieving this and that. I'm like, I'm never going to live up to any of that. And I held on to that because that's all I knew, kind of growing up, and nobody really spoke to me, or I didn't really have anybody to really speak to at that level. So tell myself, your thoughts aren't true. None of that. You're just in this stage of life, and you're gonna get to the next stage of life, and things are gonna be different if you allow them to. This is just one stage of your life. This is just one chapter. There's more to come. And so that's one of the things I would tell myself.
Yeah. So that, I feel like that was so powerful, Ronald, and your audio was going in and out a little bit. It might be the audio on my end, but with your mic. So I heard you talk about like the thoughts that you were having, that you were afraid that you were going to be no one growing up.
Yeah.
You were comparing yourself to your older siblings, and you were having a hard time forming connections that you wanted to make. And that you had to like realize that this is just going to be one chapter in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is there anything else I missed? Because I want to make sure we still capture what you were saying.
That's about it. Yeah, can you hear me well though now?
I can hear you okay now, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that summed it up.
Wow, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I hope it's an encouragement to people who are watching.
Definitely. And I don't know why. I want to throw another kind of technique that I wish I would have had as a kid.
Go for it, please.
Yeah, and so I think as kids we have a lot of more negative thoughts, or who knows at what age we do. But point is, we have a lot of negative thoughts as kids in middle school, high school. And what I wish I would have known at that time was one of my favorite techniques that I have to create separation between us and the thoughts is known as silly voice. And so with silly voice, literally all you do to create separation between you and the thoughts is, as the negative thoughts come into your mind, all you do is you repeat those exact thoughts as they come in the silliest voice that you can think of. And so sometimes I'm just like, making the silliest voices ever and just doing it even to this day, right? I just love it, but I wish I would have had it as a kid, because I know I would have been laughing about my thoughts, and I would have been able to feel them at a lesser degree, and I probably would have been able to feel a little happier as that went by. So that's another technique to use, silly voice.
I love that.
With that, yeah,
Yeah, that's a fun one too, right? If it even gets us laughing about our negative thoughts.
yeah.
Yeah. When you first said it, I was like, oh, I think SpongeBob would be my silly voice.
Yeah.
What does your silly voice sound like if you're thinking?
I try to do like an Arnold I can't even say it.
Schwarzenegger? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I try doing that. But yeah, it just cracks me up. It cracks me up.
Like the Terminator voice or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
That's great. So I did think of another question while you were saying that. Do you have time for another question?
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
When I work with some of my people in therapy, I feel like one of the hard things about having like a harsh inner voice or an inner critic is that sometimes people feel like there's a piece of that voice that helps them.
Mm-hmm.
So it can feel like, oh, but that's the voice that helps me have a really strong work ethic. And that's the voice that helps me get straight A's. And that's the voice that helps me, you know, kill my opponent on the soccer field or whatever. Metaphorically kill my opponent, but
hopefully.
Yeah. But that feels like a really hard piece sometimes. Yeah. And I just wonder if that brings up any thoughts for you about that.
Yeah. So the question that I would ask to whoever would share that is, are having these thoughts, are they genuinely helping you, or are they not? Are they making you feel like the sort of person that you want to be? Are you becoming the person that you want to be, or is it the opposite effect? Yes, you could be achieving all of these things, but is it in the way that you want to do it? So we go back to values. What sort of person do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And how do you want to behave in certain situations? And how do you want to go about yourself? Right. And so if the answer is no, it really doesn't make me feel in the way that I want to feel, then it's not working for you. But it can work for some people, right? If you say, yeah, it honestly makes me feel like I want to feel. It makes me do what I want to do. It's who I want to be as a person, well, all for you. Then it's working for you. So keep it up,
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what shows up for me with that.
Okay. So it goes back to like, is it actually helpful for you?
Mm-hmm.
And what type of person do you want to be? And is listening to that voice actually helping you be the person you want to be?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah. You're reminding me of a professor that I had in grad school, and I really appreciated how she would use the word life-giving. So to me, it's just been really helpful to think and to talk with people about is that actually life-giving for you?
Mm-hmm.
Is that inner critic life-giving for you? And it doesn't even have to be a yes or no, right? It can be in some ways yes, in some ways no. So yeah, thank you for helping us sort through that.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to share before we? I was listening to a podcast the other day. They said before we land the plane. So before we wrap up this conversation, anything else, or did we about cover it?
I think we covered it all, and just above all, there's hope. There is hope. There is hope. That's what I would wrap it up with.
Yeah, there is hope, and drop the rope.
Yep, here we go. Drop the rope. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ronald.
Thank you.